This is section 2.5, and we're going to be doing some algebra today, and we're just going to add one little part to that. We're going to kind of justify each step as we go through a problem. And it's mainly to get us ready to do proofs, actually. So we're going to get used to kind of giving a justification for everything we do, which kind of builds into our logical arguments this chapter, making all of our statements, our negations, kind of proving all those things work. We're going to skip the theorem card. If yours says that, don't worry about it, skip it. And we're going to jump right into it. All we're going to do is just solve, and as we solve, we're going to write a reason for each thing we do. So the first one says write a reason for each step. So I'm going to first move my smaller x, so I'm going to add 3x to both sides, and I'm going to end up with 5x plus 5 equals 20. I'm kind of writing my work that I'm doing really tiny, and then kind of my answer, my result really large. So your first step is always what's called your given. Like that's where you started. You could only begin the problem because we gave you one, so that's called the given. And then what we did in the second step is we added something from one side of the equal to the other. So anytime we are moving from one side of the fence to the other, we're going to name that. And this one happens to be the addition property. Next up, we would minus 5 from both sides, so we'd end up with 5x equals 15, and that would be subtraction property. And then last step would be to divide by 5. So x equals 3, and to get from that step to this one, we divided, so we'll call that the division property. So the solving is the same as it's always been. The steps that we'll use, the only difference is we're going to start adding what we did each time for a justification. Next one, I've got 60 equals -3, and then this quantity in parentheses. I'm going to show you two different ways to do this problem, and then depending on which way you did, you might have slightly different reasons. So your steps might be different, but your answer will be the same. So I'm going to fence this. Most students will probably distribute, so -24x plus 12. And so this one would be given, this one would be distribute. And then we'll minus 12 from both sides, x, and then minus 12 will be 48. So we subtracted on both sides, so subtraction. And then we're going to divide by -24, so x equals -2, and that was division property. Another way that you can solve this, you end up getting the same answer, is if I did 60 and -3, 8x minus 4. I could actually divide by -3 right away and get rid of that, and I would just be left with 8x minus 4. This would be -20. Add 4 to both sides. So 8x would equal -16, and then divide by 8. So I still end up with -2. Actually, it was the same the same amount of steps to get there, but my reasons would have just been different. My first one would have been division, then addition, then division. So even if you do the problem differently than your neighbor, as long as you guys end up at the same x, you're good to go. Just make sure that you're labeling each step as you go along. One last one to do. This one's just slightly different in terms that we have our x's on the same side. So when I put those together and make 23x, we don't call that the addition property because we didn't move anything from one side to the other. This one could just be called combined like terms. You could also just call it simplify. That's what you were doing. I forgot to write given for that one. And then last step would just be to divide by 23. So that's just the extra thing we're doing today. We are going to go ahead and solve our algebra and just add reasons as we go along.